Got nothing. No clever intro for today. You see, I've done all the clever intros I think I could do. And there are no more left to do. But I'll keep trying. I'll keep trying. Welcome back to yet another episode. Today I am finally returning to a series that I really love doing. That's my top 10 by year. The last one I did was 91, so I will be talking about 1992. I sound like a broken record talking about these years. These were my formative years growing up in the 90s. A lot of these films I'm super nostalgic for, so I love doing this series. Let's just jump right into it and not waste any time. I'd love to know what your favorite films from 1992 are, so feel free to leave those down in the comments below and we'll get a little discussion rolling. Of course, as usual, I have 5 honorable mentions, so let's jump right into those. The first one up I actually watched for the first time a couple of weeks ago as I've been kind of chipping away at the 1992 films that I had yet to see, and this one I had to give an honorable mention to. That is Naked Killer, directed by Clarence Phoque. Naked Killer is really Hong Kong's answer to La Femme Nikita, which was really influential. The French film by Luc Besson, of course, was really influential on American filmmakers and obviously Hong Kong filmmakers. This follows a group of female assassins, a small group of female assassins, who are taking it unto themselves to clean up the streets of all the scummy men out there, the misogynists, the rapists, and they are killing these dudes off in some crazy ways, as we see in the first scene. The intro sequence just is so brutal and just had my jaw on the floor. I was like, holy shit, I'm in for a treat. And boy, was I in for a treat. This one also stars Simon Yam and the girl, I forget her name, Qingmi Yao. And both of them are just dynamic on the screen together. I love both of them. Simon Yam's character plays a cop who lost his brother. Actually, he killed his brother. It's exposed to us in the first couple minutes in an accident while they were on the scene. And every time he sees a gun at this point, he throws up. He just literally pukes. And he meets this young girl, Kitty, who seeks revenge on a man who killed her father. And she busts into this place, guns ablazing, and seeks her revenge, but gets bailed out by this older female assassin lady. And she wakes up getting healed up by this woman in a very La Femme Nikita sort of style. This older woman sees that she has skill to become an assassin. She trains her. They spark up a pseudo-lesbian relationship, but her true love is Simon Yam's cop character. But there are some female lesbian assassins here, which is always good. And this movie is just a blast with awesome action, shot perfectly by Clarence Phoque. I wish there was a little, like a scene or two more, but what we do have here is just so much fun to watch. That is Naked Killer. Check this one out if you haven't seen it. Next up is Evil Dead Trap 2, Hideki. This movie is f***ing crazy. Honestly, it's one of those that was just so visually and orally arresting that I do need to rewatch this to get more of the story here. But it's a story that only the Japanese could tell. I mean, this story is so off the wall and absurd. And it follows this young woman who's a projectionist that gets sort of caught up in these weird goings-on in her town. And all of these people have sort of a dark past. And more information about these people comes out as we go along, and it gets weirder and weirder, and the last 20 minutes is just insanity, but it's also beautiful and ethereal. It's really well shot. In fact, the intro sequence has these really well-lit neon scenes that are just set against this stark black background of the night while one of the girls is getting stalked. There is like a killer going on here, like sort of a slasher kind of setup, but there's a lot more to it. But if you like really weird Japanese horror, definitely check out the Evil Dead Trap movies. The first one is not quite as weird as this one. This one just goes off the rails. And it's also, I want to shout out the director, Isao Hashimoto. Directed this one. He did not have anything to do with the first one as far as I know. I could be wrong on that. But guys, check out Evil Dead Trap 2. It's crazy. Next up is Baraka. This one is directed by Ron Frick, who was really the mastermind behind one of my favorite films of all time. That is Koyanis Katsi. The documentary, I don't even know what to call these films. Like, this is more of a nature documentary. Koyanis Katsi is definitely a sociology, nature documentary, just studying humans and our impact on the planet. This one delves more into what it means to be human. Culture. Baraka means the thread that weaves life together, and it really just paints this beautiful picture of humanity, and it takes place all across the world. Doesn't have any dialogue. It's all music. It's all visuals, and it is wonderful, guys. Check out Ron Frick's documentaries. He does movies unlike anybody that I've ever seen. He did Baraka, he did Samsara, and then he shot Koyanis Katsi. He did not direct it. That was Godfrey Ruggiero. I forget the guy's name. But it really is exposed who the true mastermind of Koyanis Katsi was, and that was Ron Frick. So check out Baraka. Incredible movie. Next up, a film I watched yesterday for the first time as of recording this video. That is Spike Lee's damn near masterpiece, in my opinion, Malcolm X. Now, I did not know much about Malcolm X going into this movie, and I really should know more about Malcolm X. Spike Lee gives us a biopic, however you want to pronounce it, of Malcolm X's life, starting from when he was a little boy up until the moment that he is killed and assassinated, I should say. And it is such a moving portrait of a man who is constantly changing and constantly trying to understand his people's role, how his people got to where they are in this country, America. And it's such an integral film to watch for everyone. This film has so much to say about African American culture, has so much to say about America, has so much to say about everyone that lives in this country. Love Malcolm X or hate him, I don't know enough about him yet. I really want to read his autobiography and other works about his life. But this is one remarkable, remarkable film. It looks amazing, too. It's just shot to the T. It has a Martin Scorsese influence, undoubtedly. There's even a shot that reminds me of Coppola's The Godfather. But it is totally Spike Lee, and only Spike Lee could tell a story of this magnitude and do it so goddamn well. It's clear that he is inspired by Malcolm X's life, which was extraordinary. But what I really took from this was Malcolm X was a man that had no problem changing and trying to understand the world around him the older he got. And that's what I really loved about this movie and about this character. But again, it's based on a real human being, a very important human being, and I need to know more about that human being. So I love this movie, one of Spike Lee's best films, hands down, Malcolm X. My last honorable mention is Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Here we go with the nostalgia. God damn, I used to watch this movie incessantly. In fact, I watched this more than the first Home Alone growing up. Something about New York City, the big FAO Schwartz, the big toy store in this. Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern are even better and even funnier. Here we! As he's throwing the bricks down, as Joe Pesci's character is moving out of the way, and the bricks just keep hitting Marv in the face. And Marv takes a beating. He usually takes more of a beating because he's not quite as astute, I'll say, as Harry. But I love this movie so much. So many great characters, like the homeless woman, the pigeon lady. I love her character. It's a really touching character that makes you empathize with people that you may not come across in your daily life, or people that you may look down upon while you're walking the streets. And it has a lot of heartfelt moments like that. It does a lot of the same gags that the original one does, which I guess you could say is kind of a cheap way out, but it's an homage to the original film, and as a kid, I just ate it up. I love this film. Kevin McAllister, Macaulay Culkin, as Kevin McAllister, does such a fantastic job. John Williams' score, da, 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 da. Got a little carried away there. And of course, Chris Columbus comes back to direct this one, and John Hughes, I'm sure, had something to do with writing it. Yep, he wrote this one as well. So, has all of the same magic as the original. I adore Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Alright, jumping into my top 10. My number 10 is so nostalgic. One of my favorite films from my childhood. I just love this movie to death. That is Peter Hyams' Stay Tuned. I also think it's criminally underrated. I love this movie. It follows John Ritter's character, Roy Nabel, who purchases this new satellite cable television system. And he's got like 1,000 channels or hundreds of channels or whatever, which at the time when I saw this in the 90s growing up was a crazy idea. Hundreds and hundreds of channels. And so he gets this TV. Him and his wife are having some issues, some marital issues. And that definitely comes into play later on in the story, and they learn to love each other again, find that spark. What really makes this film so special, especially as a kid, you gotta understand, the concept of this movie is so damn cool. And as a kid, I adored it to no end. He gets sucked into this television world, and all these channels are super bizarre, like really satirical, weird, absurd. They kind of remind me of Verhoeven's Total Recall commercials and Starship Troopers propaganda commercials, things like that. But they're just so strange. Like there's one with the Maxwell guy sitting in the chair, and the system starts playing and it blows his head clean off. Just crazy things like that. And so he gets sucked into this world. And he goes from channel to channel with his remote that he's able to essentially control what channel he's on. Now, the remote gets lost in some of these situations he gets in, and he has to find them, so he gets stuck in some of these channels for some time. Some of the channels that he gets sucked into, the one that comes right to mind is the wrestling one, where it's him and his wife. By the way, his wife gets sucked in too. So they are forced to kind of work together and get through this madness. And they're having a wrestling match with these two just super scary looking wrestlers that used to freak me out as a kid. And then there's an animated sequence that was supervised, I believe, or done by Chuck Jones. And it's kind of a Tom and Jerry-esque sort of thing. There's Northern Overexposure, which is a play on Northern Exposure, an old a sitcom from the 90s. There's tons, Wayne's World parodies. It is just so fun. So much fun. Of course, the devil, played by Jeffrey Jones, is sort of controlling the situation and getting people sucked into the television. It's all a big allegory, right, for getting lost in the TV. This was a big issue in the 90s. This was a big concern in the 90s where people were watching too much TV. I still think we watch too much TV as a society. Maybe not. Who the hell knows? All I know is Stay Tuned is so much fun. One of my favorite Peter Hyams movies, if not my favorite. It is so nostalgic. It's awesome. It's funny. Stay tuned. I need to get the Blu-ray for this bad boy. What am I waiting for? Next up is Batman Returns, the sequel to 1989's Batman, directed by Tim Burton. Batman Returns is also directed by Tim Burton, and these two films might be my favorite Batman movies. I really love The Dark Knight as well. I even like Batman Forever. And Mask of Phantasm, the animated movie, I guess I could count with the rest of these. It's one of my favorites as well. But Batman 89, I think, is my all-time favorite Batman. Batman Returns is not too far behind, man. This one has Danny DeVito as the Penguin, who is just remarkable, disgusting. I always think of when he's eating that raw fish. It's so nasty. Still, it actually bothers me more to this day because of the way that I personally eat. You also have Christopher Walken as Max Schreck, the sort of corrupt mayor of the city, and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. She is so perfect. I love her in this role. I used to love her as a kid, but I love her even more. It's such a nuanced, quirky, sexy performance that she gives us, and you see her origin story from this shy sort of assistant to Max Schreck, who turns into the Catwoman. The scenes where she's cracking her whip and she's seducing Batman, and it's just so goddamn good. Her performance is excellent and sexy as hell. And of course you have Michael Keaton back as the titular Batman. This one is basically a Christmas movie. It takes place during Christmas. The opening action sequence is crazy with these clowns with weapons. It's so awesome. Snow falling. You've got a giant Christmas tree lighting. This film is just quintessential Tim Burton. In my opinion, the production design has stepped up even more from the original. The lighting is even better. The set design is even better. Gotham is still a character, an integral character, and that's what I feel like the Christopher Nolan films are missing. Gotham never feels like a character, just feels like Chicago. Gotham in Burton's Batman is a character. It's a main character, in fact, and the foggy streets and the dismal sort of imagery, and in this case, the snow. Oh, I love Batman Returns. It's my number 9. Next up, number 8 is Super Cop, also known as Police Story 3. I love all the Police Story movies, or at least the first 4. I actually haven't seen past that, like New Police Story and Police Story Lockdown. But Police Story 1, 2, 3, and First Strike, 4, I adore all of these films. Super Cop, no exception. Story is simple. Jackie Chan teams up with Michelle Yeoh, which really elevates this movie for me. They are constantly trying to outdo each other, both in the film as characters and from what I hear on set. Michelle Yeoh was trying to do all of her own stunts just to keep up with Jackie, and she does in fact do the majority of her stunts, including the crazy motorcycle jump onto the moving train at the end of this film, which is just insane. Of course, you have Jackie in the finale hanging from a helicopter and landing on a moving train. The action sequence at the end is just phenomenal. It's so off the wall, over the top, in all the great ways that Jackie Chan knows how to do. The action is shot so damn well. The fight against the cops. Michelle Yeoh is kicking ass in this movie. I love Super Cop. One of the best action flicks of the 90s that not many people really talk about. When they think of 90s Jackie films, you get Rumble in the Bronx and Rush Hour, but not enough people talk about Super Cop Police Story 3. It is such a phenomenal film. Stanley Tong and Jackie Chan, they really could do no wrong, in my opinion. Yes, some people hate Kung Fu Yoga. I don't hate Kung Fu Yoga. The film that I think they missed the mark on was The Myth, but they kind of got it right with Kung Fu Yoga. Either way, Super Cop is one of the best action flicks of the 90s. Top tier Jackie Chan, no doubt about it. And we get Michelle Yeoh teaming up with Jackie to kick some motherfucking ass. It is remarkable. It is Super Cop. Bottle broke. Gotta use a good old-fashioned glass. Well, isn't that nice? Oh, nostalgia. Aladdin. Arguably one of my favorite Disney animated movies. This one just swept me away as a kid and continues to do so to this day. I think it's a masterpiece. I really do. I think it's one of Disney's best. Of course, based on The Thief of Baghdad from the Arabian Nights compilation of stories. The action in this movie is so well drawn, so well done. The music, some of the most catchy, well-written songs out of any Disney movie that I've ever seen. The genie played by the late Robin Williams is just perfect. Nobody will ever will be able to do it like he did. All of the voice cast is perfection. It's so vibrant on Blu-ray. When I first watched this on Blu-ray, it just blew my mind. It really did. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was as if I was watching it for the first time. Arabian Nights! Oh, Arabian Moon! I love this movie. I'm getting so giddy just thinking about it. Not only is it one of the best Disney animated films ever, in my opinion, but it's also one of the funniest, mostly because of Robin Williams, who he's improving to the point where you gotta rewind it to keep up with his speed. It's like his stand-up persona infused into a character that just perfectly fits Robin Williams. He's doing impersonations all over the place, a joke a second. Not even the character of Aladdin could keep up with him. Oh my god, I love Aladdin. What can I say? It's one of my favorite animated films of all time. It is pure magic. My number 6 is a film I've watched twice now within the last few months. Tetsuo 2, The Body Hammer. Sequel to Tetsuo the Iron Man, directed by Shinya Tsukamoto. I did a whole video talking about Japanese cyberpunk Phase 1, as I deemed it, and both Tetsuo the Iron Man and Tetsuo 2 Body Hammer are in that video. I discussed them at great length. We still get the 4:3 aspect ratio from the original Tetsuo the Iron Man, which I love, just really complements the film, makes it stand out as distinct and unique. But Shinya brings us color, and the color in this film always has meaning. You have fiery reds, in fact a sequence that's lit by fire, and it looks so amazing. And then you have these moody blue sequences. Follows a young man who gets his son kidnapped in the very beginning of the film and actually killed, brutally killed, in front of his eyes, and he starts to transform into this machine-like being to exact revenge on these punks, these thugs who took away from him his son. No one on the planet could have made this film besides Tsukamoto and his warped, twisted imagination. The cinematography is so unique. Some of the shots in this I've never seen anybody even attempt in any other movie. So inventive in terms of camera angles and lighting and stop motion, and the effect work is absolutely out of this world incredible. The set design, the chrome look of this future, the descent into technological madness that our character goes through. It is just so incredible. I love Tetsuo the Body Hammer. It makes me feel things that not many films could make me feel. It is a very audio-visual experience, and it blows me away. I've only seen it twice at this point, but this is one for the books, man. One of my favorite films of all time, and definitely one of my favorite films of '92. Tetsuo the Body Hammer. My number 5 was a film I watched in my early teens, and it changed the way I looked at horror films and gore films. What can it be? Dead Alive, directed by Peter Jackson. Back when Pete Jackson was making these incredible over-the-top gore fests, Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead elsewhere, is one of the best horror movies ever made. It is a masterpiece of horror, of gore. Gorer? It follows a young man who has an obsessive mother who he still lives with, and he's just doing everything for this old woman who just treats him like shit. He sparks up the cutest romance in any horror film ever, honestly, named Paquita Maria. His name is Lionel. They just go on this incredible journey of gore and mayhem. Essentially, in the beginning, a Sumatran rat monkey bites one of the people that are trying to take it to study it, and it passes this virus, this zombie-like virus, down to this small New Zealand town and starts inflicting everyone. Madness ensues. You have the infamous lawnmower kill where Lionel is just chopping up zombies, and blood and flesh and gore is just flying everywhere. The final horror sequence, the final effect sequence of this movie, this giant behemoth of a monster who actually gives birth at one point, who swallows Lionel and gives birth to him in a very symbolic scene. And this creature is just incredible. The design is just so over the top. The effects work, I can't stress enough, is some of the best in any horror gore film or horror film, period. Peter Jackson, please do another movie like this. Just one more. I love Lord of the Rings. It's in my top 10 of all time. But Bad Taste, Meet the Feebles, Dead Alive, The Frighteners. I miss this Peter Jackson despite him evolving and becoming one of the great filmmakers of all time. Man, Dead Alive, aka Brain Dead, is my number 5. Woo! Next up, my number 4 is a film that scared me shitless as a kid. I cannot stress to you how much it scared me. The idea, the concept, the themes. As an adult, this movie means so much more to me now because I see what it's saying. I see what it's trying to say. Candyman. Candyman, 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 Candyman. When I was like 5 or 6 years old, I would see this in the video store. And just the image of a hooked man on the cover just scared the shit out of me. Or at least on the back of the box. I wasn't able to see this film until a couple years later. I don't know, I was like 9 and my dad was like, yeah, we could watch it now. And so we did, and it scarred me. I was so scared by this film. The idea of saying this killer's name in the mirror 5 times and him appearing behind you as the lights flicker and just eviscerates you. Ugh, bees coming out of his mouth, it f***ed me up as a kid. But I adored it. Now, as an adult, I see that this film is a commentary about growing up in the hood. And it's an urban legend through and through, like a hood urban legend that is going on, spreading throughout this Cabrini Green project. And this young woman who doesn't believe in it, of course, gets in way over her head in terms of danger because she's entering this project as a white woman who has no idea what the hell she's getting into. And, of course, finding out that Candyman is real. And there's some great psychological horror that goes on where all the people around her don't quite believe what she's going through. That sort of theme has been done in so many horror films, but very few get it right like Bernard Rose does in Candyman. Ugh. Philip Glass's score. I was talking about Koyaanisqatsi earlier. He is known for Koyaanisqatsi, the score. But he does the Candyman music here, the score, the theme, and it is incredible. It's so iconic. I'm probably getting that a little wrong, but that's how it is in my head right now. It's so iconic. It's so creepy. It is perfectly juxtaposed against this urban jungle, this urban environment that the film takes place in. There aren't many movies like this. True urban horror movies that tackle African American issues. I adore this movie so much. I will to the day that I die. Candyman, Candyman. Candyman, Candyman. Candyman. The next film, my number 3, is another film that helped shape me, helped mold me as a young boy. At this point, I was around 13 years old when I was really getting into more serious crime films, Godfather, Goodfellas, things like that. This was my discovery of one of my favorite directors of all time, Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. I adore this movie. I used to love it so much growing up, but now as an adult, it's such a brilliant film. And for this to be Tarantino's first feature film that he wrote and directed, it's just incredible what he was able to achieve on such a small budget. Thunder. And with an incredible cast who could not pass up on the script that this young man had written. The dialogue is perfect. The pacing is perfect. The characterization is perfect. I love this movie. Is it his best movie? I think it's one of his best. Top 3, no doubt about it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs. Not in any particular order, but I think it's one of his best because of its minimalistic nature, its simplicity, its imagery, its symbolic imagery that it has, which I was fascinated by as a kid, like the liquids of different colors and the orange balloon and the little clues he was giving his audience as to what was going on and who was going to last in the end. It's got so many funny parts that I can't even say on camera. I remember showing this movie to all of my friends growing up, and they all loved it, but not as much as I did. I took this one with me through my childhood. Tarantino is still one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, somebody that has influenced me greatly, somebody that I look up to, somebody that loves film as much as I do, is passionate about film as much as I am. And Reservoir Dogs was where it all started for Tarantino. It's my number 3. Oh, the nostalgia! I should just have a button. Oh, the nostalgia. Oh, the nostalgia. Army of Darkness. Army of Darkness. A masterpiece of insanity and lunacy. It blends action, adventure, horror, and comedy like no movie I've ever seen. This one definitely leans more towards action-adventure than it does horror, but it's rooted in horror, of course. You have like the Jason and the Argonaut, Harryhausen skeletons that are just bumbling and hilarious. You've got one-liners out the wazoo. Ash's character definitely inspired Duke Nukem, there's no doubt about it. Groovy, baby. Oh my god. Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants. You could go on and on. The Three Stooges-esque antics of this film with the mini Ashes that are just torturing Big Ash. Every single set piece, every single scene in this film is either hilarious, horrific, or just fun. And that is the embodiment of this film. It is the quintessential fun movie of the 90s. Now, believe it or not, my father and I watched this movie when I was probably around 5 or 6 years old. And it screwed me up. It scared me shitless, I gotta be honest. One of the scenes that stuck out for me as a kid was the geyser of blood, the witch in the pit, and then the geyser of blood. Up to that point, I had never seen the amount of blood that was in that scene in a movie. And I was like, what? Or if any blood at that point. I was so young. My father thought it was okay for me to watch, and I think he wasn't too far off. My mom wasn't happy, I'm sure, but that scene with the witch and Ash fighting her in like the first 10-15 minutes of the movie just swept me away as a kid, just captured my imagination, and that freaking geyser of blood. But watching this as an adult, it is so much fun. You could watch this over and over and over again. And in fact, this has a bunch of different cuts: theatrical version, director's cut, television cut, international cuts, which I've yet to dig into. I guess I've only seen the theatrical cut at this point. I'm not exactly sure. All I know is it's one of my favorites of all time. Hands down. I still prefer Evil Dead 2, believe it or not, and I love Evil Dead 1, but Evil Dead 2 is still my favorite Evil Dead movie. The show is fantastic as well. The remake, no thank you. No Ash, not interested. Bruce Campbell as Ash is one of the great cinematic heroes of all time. Army of Darkness. And my number one is a film that I saw when I was like 14, maybe 15 years old. Changed the way I looked at action. I was like, where has this movie been for the first 15 years of my life? Hong Kong, apparently. John Woo's Hard Boiled, starring Chow Yun-fat, one of the most underrated action heroes in cinematic history, in my opinion. Definitely of the 80s and 90s. Chow Yun-fat plays Tequila. Such a cool character. Again, one of the coolest characters, cinematic history, no doubt about it. He is a hard-boiled cop, hell-bent on taking down these gun smugglers in his hometown, in his home city of Hong Kong, and he crosses paths with an undercover agent who he is not aware is an undercover agent till a certain point in the film, an incredible point in the film. This undercover cop is played by Tony Leung, and he is undercover as one of the triad sort of underbosses, or not even an underboss. He's trying to work his way up in the ranks as a triad, and also try to take down this gun smuggling ring, just like Tequila is. Now, of course, they have similar motives, and they end up teaming up and kicking an immense amount of ass in some of the greatest gunfight action sequences you will ever see in any movie in any decade. Without Hard Boiled and the Killer and John Woo's incredible style of shooting action and gunfights, we wouldn't have films like John Wick 1, 2, and 3. We would not have the John Wick trilogy, which really brings all of the great things about 80s and 90s action and sort of amalgamates them into one incredible trilogy. But I still think John Woo did the gun-fu even more ethereal, even more dreamlike, I'll say, with the slow motion and the giant blood squibs and the lack of music during the action, which is a very Hong Kong thing to do, and just the badass physical performance of Chow Yun-fat and Tony Leung in this case, who are doing these incredible stunts with more sparks and gunshot flares than you will ever see. The warehouse sequence is one of the great action sequences of all time, and it's only outdone by the finale sequence that takes place in a hospital, an unbelievable one-take sequence with so much depth, so much dynamicism. And I say that because there's this one bit in this scene where Tony Leung's character accidentally shoots somebody who works at the hospital. And the look on his face without any dialogue is just utter disappointment. He's dishonored. He's like, oh my God, what have I done? I'm so caught up in the violence, the adrenaline. and he just offed an innocent person, and there's this moment that just slows down and sort of dollies into his face, and he's like, oh shit. And the audience doesn't need any dialogue to know exactly what happened in that sequence. But in order to stay alive, they've got to keep going. They got to keep fighting. Oh my god, it's such an incredible action movie. One of the best of all time. If I was to have a top 10 action movies of all time list, this would be in it. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. Hard-boiled. I just want to thank you all for checking out my top 10 films of 1992. It was another nostalgic year for me. Nostalgic from when I was a small kid growing up in the 90s to when I was becoming a man in the 2000s. So many films here influenced me so greatly, helped mold me, helped mold my cinematic sensibilities. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'd love to know what your top 10 films from 92 looks like, so feel free to leave that down in the comments below, and we'll get a discussion rolling. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to the channel and want to see more videos like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, as well as the little bell for notifications. Anyway guys, I will see you all next time. Bored Cyborg, out.